Your mind needs to understand that you are not going to be abandoned in the forest. That is why you are jumping on the newest trends. That's why you always feel like you have to have the newest Nikes, the newest smartwatch. So your mind needs to know that the efforts that you're putting out there are going to be valued, that they're going to be received by the tribe. Because remember, your mind is ancient. It is functioning off of structures and systems that have been developed over eons of humans trialing and erroring their way into a successful way of being. It is also why you lay awake at night, wondering why you keep repeating the same patterns, when you know very well what you need to do. I mean, you've watched all the YouTube videos, you've listened to all the podcasts of all the new productivity techniques, you've watched tons of self-help videos like this, telling you what the root of the struggle is and how to prioritize your goals. But your mind is still working on a validating system. That is why you feel like there's something missing. Well, that's why there's something that you are afraid of, when you know perfectly well you just have to do the thing. If you have the new smartphone, people are going to view you for a time as having some sort of merit. They can talk to you about the newest technology, and you can see yourself as valuable because you've procured this asset. This is wonderful. Look at this new thing I'm bringing into the tribe. People can look at it. People will give me attention. If you're struggling with talking to beautiful people, for example, trying to strike out and out of your comfort zone, start a relationship with somebody you really admire, somebody you really appreciate, that can be a challenge because you might fail at that. And then people will see that. Then maybe your reputation in the tribe might fracture. Maybe then people will see that you're not really successful. This is not happening because people are very focused on themselves nowadays. But your mind is still thinking of it this way. It's still recognizing that if you experience some sort of failure in the public eye, that means your reputation dwindles. And that goes back to a very ancient programming that says, you might not have the value that we thought. You might not be able to give us the things that we need in the tribe, so that might not make you so available to mates. That might not allow you to receive the provisions and the protection you need. This is not how we live nowadays. You live in a very safe place. If it's not perhaps the place you want, it is a place that has a door and a lock, which means physical threats aren't coming in. This has nothing to say about the higher order needs that you have, the needs for protection, self-actualization, recognition, love, acceptance. These things are still your needs. But our mind is wired in the root need still. And if you're following the trends, you've become captured by a psychological principle that I'm going to touch on in a little bit, that is really capitalized on by marketing companies, that actually hijacks a very important desire for you to belong. And if you belong, you're following the trend or you're buying the thing that everybody else is buying so that you will be predictable. And if you're predictable, you'll be safe to keep around because you won't do anything that might harm the group. You won't bring any weird ideas in that's going to disrupt the peace. But of course, we don't live in a predictable time. We live in a very safe time, like I just mentioned, but the time that we live in is very uncertain. The future, with AI, stands to really disrupt things, and that shakes people. What's funny is, in the era of AI, you don't want to be entirely predictable. You don't want to follow the trends because you want to be authentic. That way AI can't replace you. If you're capitalizing on your authentic creativity, you're bringing new ideas to the table. Not only does AI not have the ability to replicate them, but you are also offering up something genuinely new. Those things that AI can't do. So if you're struggling to make that progress in life, if you're struggling to take on that new venture, chances are you might be experiencing what I went through, which is in a pivotal moment in time, you didn't get this idea constructed in your mind that I'm safe. I'm recognized. Because for a child, those two things are the same. When the child is recognized, keep in mind, we form all of our structures of ourselves and the world when we're children. So this is not a slight to you. This is just how the mind works. If we don't get that recognition in life, the child fears that they might be lost in the forest, that mom and dad might not notice them in a pivotal time, when things maybe are chaotic, and the child isn't given that recognition that it needs to feel safe. Then, further on in life, you could experience the things that I experienced, where you don't even put the effort in. You find yourself experiencing barriers that don't even make any sense. You could be falling on terrible habits like alcoholism. You could be falling on just dark relationships that are shallow and don't give you that need to be connected with somebody. You could be having so many false starts, starting a lot of things but never finishing anything. Your mind has created this structure that the efforts you put out, the energy you put out, isn't going to be seen. And so your mind, being an efficiency organizer, organizing for efficiency, and being a meaning machine, it is going to understand that that means that I should just play it safe, that I have to take care of myself, that it's not safe to engage that creative mode, that stepping out of the box, risk-taking mode. I have to protect myself because I'm not being recognized, I'm not being protected. So you have to do what I did. If you want to break through those barriers, you have to start talking to yourself. Because your mind is going to do another thing. It is going to believe that the efforts you put in, they're just not going to be worth the effort. So it will find really strange ways of sabotaging you. You'll take on those bad habits, and then you'll lay in bed at night wondering, why didn't I go to the gym in the morning? I said I wanted to be fit. I said I wanted to lose weight. Why did I burst out again at my girlfriend? Why am I so emotional? I know not to get reactive. The patterns that you're repeating, they do have a reason and a cause. I can't tell you right now what specifically that is. That takes a little more in-depth work. The fact of the matter is, you need to be telling yourself that your effort is valid, and so you need to talk to yourself, because the mind understands the images you have in your mind and the words that you say to yourself. This is the crucial aspect of why you need to talk to yourself. Because throughout the course of the day, your mind is taking in vast amounts of information, filtering it, and then categorizing it. That categorization that it gives is based very heavily upon that image of the world that your mind formed early on in life. So if you're experiencing these barriers, these false starts, this self-sabotage, then likely what's happening is you're getting only the information from that old, outdated idea of yourself as a vulnerable child. But you're an adult now. You don't need that. That's an old pattern that doesn't work anymore. It worked for a while when mom and dad weren't noticing you, when they didn't perhaps give you what you needed. But now you got this, and you know it too, which is probably why it's so frustrating. The worst part about being bullied is that your mind needs to belong when it's a child. You need to belong when you're a child because you need to be in that in-group. If you're in that in-group, you're not disrupting things, and so you'll be received, held, protected, all of the things that the child needs that can't give him itself. But if the child does have to start creating these things for itself, it likely will not change when you're an adult. So you will have the pattern in your mind, like I did for a long time, that I can't step out of the comfort zone because I need to be attentive. What happens when you're so hyper-attentive, hyper-vigilant, looking for that recognition, you don't engage that unique creativity that you have. You don't engage your imagination. And that's why you just keep playing it safe, staying in the same place, because the same place is safe. The worst part of not talking to yourself, if this has at all resonated with you, is that your mind is taking in all this information from marketing companies. And these marketing companies are capitalizing on a very ancient need to belong, to be in the in-group. Because what they do is they flood your feed, they flood billboards, they flood the ads with so many samples of this product, so many examples of this product, so many visuals that then your mind rather, not you necessarily, because there is a difference, your mind interprets that these things are popular. And because they're popular, they must be safe. And so if either by default your mind simply pursues them because it's the easy path, it's been proven by all these people, when really it's just a marketing budget that's huge, and that makes it seem like the product is everywhere. What happens here is a subtle understanding in your mind that I don't have this, and so I don't belong to a group. I'm actually on the outskirts, which means I'm not safe, which means I need this thing. Not only do you feel like you need the thing on some level, but also you're hypervigilant then. The beautiful thing is, even if your life is under chaos right now, you keep talking to yourself and you create a foundation of comfort, of confidence, of understanding and support that nobody else can give you. Because ultimately, even if somebody else is saying something to you, your mind decides whether or not to let it in. It doesn't just take in information willy-nilly. However, if it's repeated, if you're primed for the information, if you're primed for that dialogue that you're hearing, your mind is going to then let it in. This is what's so essential. If you were bullied like I was, for a long time, your mind is looking for those threats. You can say to yourself what I'm saying to myself lately. I've got two favorite mantras that I repeat to myself. One is, I do this excellently. This isn't, I'm doing this excellently, because that leaves space there for me to look back and say, oh, I have to confirm this? Am I doing this excellently? It tells me that I do this excellently. I don't do this the best out of everybody in the world, but I do it with excellence. And that grows constantly. But what it does is it focuses my attention so that my actions actually confirm what my mind is hearing. And it doesn't leave any space for all this judgment, the criticism. Another mantra that I have, that I use a lot, is I am enough. That's one that is specific to me, but I'm going to tell you why it works. It's because when I was in my first, most pivotal RTT session that changed everything for me, I understood that what I was doing was a lot of the times looking for approval. Let me explain. In RTT, what happens is you shut off your critical mind. You shut off that part of your mind which is telling you, okay, this is kind of ridiculous, this is crazy, this is not going to work, all of that stuff. That part of your mind is shut down. You can then open your mind to just receive what's coming. And that audio that I was listening to for weeks afterwards, that implanted into my mind this understanding that I don't have to look for approval that much. Yes, I have to fit into society in some way. I have to be a decent human being. Of course, I'm social. I need to interact with people with harmony. But what I'm doing, what I'm pursuing, I have the capacity to achieve success for myself. I'm enough. I've got this. Also, I don't need to rely on the approval of others. I'm enough regardless of that approval. And so that one is specific to me. If you do RTT, if you go through a session yourself, you will recognize a simple, powerful mantra that works for you. Oftentimes, my clients discover that I'm enough is one of the first ones. But I don't want to put that in your mind. It's different every time with every client. That's just one of the most popular ones. When you go through this process in RTT, you can see objectively the things that your mind is trying to do for you. And you might just see how ridiculously pointless they are. Because these structures of the mind, they came from a place in time which you do not embody anymore. You're not a child anymore. Those foundations of and formations and ideas of the world don't make sense anymore. Because you're an adult, you have skills, and you don't need to be playing out those old patterns anymore. You likely have never gone through this shift on a subconscious level, so that's why these patterns keep coming up. But what's amazing is that when you recognize what they are, you might just have what happened to me happen to you. is that you realize how silly they are, how understandable they are as well, because the child didn't know any better. So what else was it going to do? But then when you see these on a deeper level, when your critical mind is shut off, acceptance is almost immediate. You might just have what happened to me happen to you, which is you transform in an instant. Your life can never be the same anymore, and you have all this freedom, this whole canvas of the rest of your life, at which to not play out those old roles and not have this senseless, wasteful resistance that fights against your efforts, keeps you locked in the same place, and keeps you repeating those patterns that you know you need to quit. Save your energy. Save yourself the time. You don't need to just employ effort. Talking to yourself is the first step. You can do this consciously. It's very effective. But it gets even more effective when you automate it and you connect it to something deeper, to that understanding that I was just talking about. If you want to go deeper, you can book an RTT session with me. Just click the link in the bio. I love working with men who have great aspirations, who just want to get their life moving and stop repeating those patterns that come from useless overthinking, that keep them overwhelmed and trapped in those same cycles. Thank you so much for listening. It truly means a lot that you take the time to carve a path for yourself that's more harmonious for yourself as well as for those around you. My name is Gregory, and my goal is to alleviate the suffering that many men don't need to experience by undoing the harmful mental patterns that keep them stuck, free them from those repeating patterns so they can actually start making changes in their life and the lives of the people around them. Please share this with somebody who you think could use to hear this or needs to hear it. And I'm sending you all the best. Much love. Peace.